Welcome back to Spark Recaps. Today, we're diving into the 2016 sci-fi, romance, and drama film, Passengers. This emotionally charged story takes us on a journey through the vastness of space, exploring themes of love, isolation, and survival. Spoilers ahead, so proceed with caution. The film opens aboard the Avalon, a massive interstellar spaceship en route to Homestead 2, a distant colonized planet. The ship is on autopilot with all 258 crew members and 5,000 passengers in hibernation pods, peacefully sleeping through the 120-year journey. However, trouble brews when the Avalon passes through an asteroid field. Despite the ship's shields diverting power to protect against debris, a massive asteroid strikes the vessel, causing significant damage and system malfunctions. While the ship begins its automated repairs, one hibernation pod unexpectedly activates, waking a passenger, Jim Preston, a mechanical engineer. Jim wakes up disoriented, greeted by an automated assistant that informs him he's been in hibernation for 120 years and that the ship is just 4 months away from its destination. Relieved and excited, Jim is instructed to enjoy the ship's luxurious amenities while preparing for his new life on Homestead 2. However, as he explores the ship, he quickly realizes something is wrong. The corridors are eerily empty, and no one else is awake. A holographic briefing reveals Earth's dire conditions, overpopulated and overpriced, but offers no explanation for why Jim is alone. Jim's unease grows as he discovers the ship's main concourse. Steward's station and even the bridge are completely deserted. Through the locked doors of the bridge, he sees the crew still in hibernation. His dread deepens when he visits the observatory and learns the horrifying truth. The Avalon is still 90 years away from Homestead 2. Jim has woken up far too early, with no way to return to hibernation. Desperate, he sends a message to Earth, but due to the vast distance, any reply would take 55 years to arrive. Crushed by the realization that he is truly alone, Jim stumbles upon the ship's bar, where he meets Arthur, an android bartender. While Arthur provides some companionship, Jim soon realizes the android cannot truly understand his predicament. Determined to find a solution, Jim begins experimenting with his hibernation pod, attempting to repair it with the tools available on the ship. His efforts fail, and he tries to access the crew's hibernation pods, only to find them inaccessible as well. Meanwhile, minor system malfunctions continue to plague the ship, adding to his growing despair. To distract himself, Jim breaks into a gold-class suite, indulging in its luxurious amenities, dining at the ship's finest restaurants, and exploring its entertainment options. Despite these efforts, the crushing weight of his isolation remains. One night, after drinking heavily, Jim discovers an airlock equipped with spacesuits. He steps outside the ship and is overwhelmed by the breathtaking view of the cosmos. For a brief moment, he feels awe and wonder, but it is quickly replaced by the profound loneliness of being the only conscious human in the universe. In his darkest moment, Jim contemplates ending his life, but ultimately decides against it. While wandering the ship, Jim comes across a hibernation pod containing a woman named Aurora Lane. Intrigued, he looks up her passenger profile and listens to her interviews. Aurora is a writer and journalist, and Jim is captivated by her charm, intelligence, and passion. Over time, he becomes obsessed with her, reading her works and imagining what life with her might be like. Jim wrestles with an ethical dilemma. If he wakes Aurora, she will be trapped on the ship with him, unable to return to hibernation and destined to live out her life aboard the Avalon. Though he initially decides against it, his growing loneliness eventually overpowers his conscience. Unable to resist any longer, Jim activates Aurora's pod and watches from afar as she awakens, disoriented and unaware of what has happened. When they finally meet, Jim explains that they are the only two awake on the ship and takes her to the observatory to reveal their situation. Aurora is horrified to learn there is no way to return to hibernation, leaving her stranded on the ship for the rest of her life. After waking Aurora, Jim initially tries to act as a supportive companion. He encourages her to rest, understanding the physical toll of coming out of hibernation. Aurora feels sympathy for Jim, realizing he endured over a year of isolation, but she remains unaware of the true circumstances of her awakening. As guilt gnaws at him, Jim visits the bar and confesses to Arthur his regret over waking Aurora, asking the android to keep the truth hidden. Aurora begins adjusting to her new reality, exploring the ship and consulting the automated info desk about the hibernation pods, trying to find solutions to their predicament. Jim joins her and they decide to have breakfast together. Aurora notices the ship's repetitive routine, observing that Jim has eaten the same meal for over a year. She surprises him with a gold-class menu option, adding some variety to his monotonous existence. Aurora, determined to find a way to fix the pods, explores the ship's infirmary, delves into research documents, and even attempts to access the crew's hibernation quarters. Her hopefulness contrasts with Jim's resigned acceptance of their situation. However, both begin noticing increasing malfunctions throughout the ship, raising concerns about its overall integrity. As time passes, Aurora grapples with the reality of her situation. She jogs around the ship, writes in solitude, and swims in the pool, all the while becoming more conscious of her isolation. Seeking a distraction, she interviews Jim, curious about his reasons for leaving Earth. Jim shares his aspirations of starting a new life on Homestead 2, revealing his longing to be somebody. Aurora reciprocates by explaining her unique plan. Unlike the other passengers, she has a round-trip ticket. Her dream was to spend a year on Homestead 2 and return to Earth to write the ultimate journalistic piece, becoming the first person to document such a journey. This revelation deepens their bond even as Aurora begins to lose hope of finding a solution to their situation. Jim, sensing her growing despair, devises ways to cheer her up. He takes her dancing, to the cinema, and even to a basketball court. They visit the bar, where Jim introduces Aurora to Arthur. Though she enjoys these moments, the weight of their predicament is never far from her mind. Despite his efforts, Jim feels increasingly guilty about his actions. One evening, Aurora finds a miniature Chrysler building that Jim has crafted for her, a gesture that brings some solace to their complicated relationship. Soon after, they share a dinner date at the bar, exchanging stories about their lives. Aurora reveals the profound loss of her father during her teenage years. Jim surprises Aurora with a spacewalk, giving her a chance to experience the majesty of the cosmos. As they float together, disconnected from their magnetic boots, they share a sense of wonder. The experience strengthens their connection, and soon their relationship blossoms. Aurora moves into Jim's cabin and they begin living as a couple, sharing meals, exploring the ship, and celebrating moments together. On Aurora's birthday, Jim plans a special evening. After dining at one of the ship's fine restaurants, they return to the bar. While Aurora chats with Arthur, Jim prepares to propose with a handmade ring. However, Arthur inadvertently reveals that Jim had intentionally woken her from hibernation. Aurora is devastated. Confronting Jim, she accuses him of robbing her of her future. Overcome with fury and betrayal, she moves out of his cabin, avoiding him entirely. Her anger consumes her, and one night, she violently confronts Jim in a fit of rage. Though Jim attempts to apologize and explain his feelings, Aurora cannot forgive him for the choice he made. Meanwhile, the ship's malfunctions grow more severe. Jim plants a tree in the concourse, but even this small gesture of hope cannot mend their fractured relationship. Then, something unexpected happens. The voice of Gus Mancuso, the ship's deck chief, crackles over the comm system, questioning who planted the tree. Aurora and Jim rush to the concourse to meet Mancuso, who has mysteriously awakened from hibernation. Confused by the situation, he investigates the ship's systems and discovers critical errors stemming from an event 2 years earlier. Malfunctions throughout the ship have begun cascading, threatening its survival. Mancuso joins Aurora and Jim in trying to uncover the source of the issues. As they investigate, Mancuso confronts Jim about waking Aurora, condemning his actions but recognizing the urgency of the current crisis. One night, a gravity malfunction nearly drowns Aurora while she swims, highlighting the ship's worsening instability. Together, the trio pieces together the mystery. A catastrophic event 2 years earlier had damaged a major system, leaving the ship struggling to compensate. They must locate and repair the source of the failure before it's too late. The ship's critical errors intensify, putting its entire operation at risk. If the issues aren't resolved, the vessel and its passengers will remain stranded indefinitely. Jim, Aurora, and Mancuso rush to locate the problem, but Mancuso collapses. They take him to the infirmary, where it's revealed that he is dying and no treatment can save him or even prolong his life. Later, in the observatory, Mancuso hands Jim his ID bracelet, entrusting him and Aurora with the task of fixing the ship. Shortly after, he succumbs to his illness. As grief grips them, the ship's lights turn a warning red, and violent tremors shake the vessel. Jim and Aurora sprint toward engineering, but as they move, further failures occur. The gravity drive malfunctions again, and even Arthur, the android bartender, is affected. Jim reluctantly deactivates Arthur before they proceed. Reaching the engineering section, they trace the root of the problem to the power plant. Opening a hatch, they discover that a breach caused by an asteroid has damaged the hull. The sudden decompression pulls Aurora into the breach, but she manages to hold on. Jim is also sucked toward the opening, but grabs onto the hatch as it struggles to close. Both are eventually pulled into the breach, but quickly manage to seal it, temporarily stabilizing the situation. Their relief is short-lived. Jim realizes that the asteroid caused multiple breaches in the hull. They follow its trajectory and discover it has severely damaged the reactor control computer. To prevent a catastrophic meltdown, they must repair it. Jim retrieves a replacement part and they install it, but the reactor venting process continues to fail. As the situation worsens, Jim determines that the vent door must be opened manually from outside the ship to cool the reactor. Both don spacesuits, and before heading out, Jim gives Aurora Mancuso's bracelet, knowing he might not survive. Aurora, reluctant to let him go, tells him to return because she can't imagine life on the ship without him. While Aurora monitors the reactor, a bolt from the overheating system injures her arm. Meanwhile, Jim reaches the vent door, battling the extreme heat and pressure. He realizes he must physically hold the vent door open for the reactor to release its built-up energy. Reluctantly, Aurora agrees to his plan after an emotional argument, prioritizing the lives of the passengers. The venting succeeds, but the process pushes Jim away from the ship, snapping his tether. His suit's pressure begins to drop. He radios Aurora, apologizing again for his past actions. Desperate to save him, she rushes to put on another suit and ventures outside, but her tether falls short. Just as she's pulled back, she grabs onto Jim's broken tether and manages to reel him in. Aurora drags Jim's lifeless body to the infirmary, only to find that he has already died. Using Mancuso's bracelet to override medical protocols, she activates the pod to resuscitate him. The system works automatically, reviving Jim, and Aurora finally forgives him for everything. Later, they repair Arthur and give Mancuso a heartfelt space burial. Jim shows Aurora a way to use the medical pod as a makeshift hibernation chamber. He offers her the chance to sleep through the remainder of the journey, but she chooses to stay awake and live with him instead. Jim proposes to Aurora, and together they live out the rest of their lives on the ship. Decades later, 88 years after the journey began, the Avalon arrives at Homestead 2. The crew awakens to find the ship transformed, overgrown with life and filled with evidence of the extraordinary life Jim and Aurora created together. Aurora leaves a message for the crew, recounting the story of her and Jim's lives aboard the Avalon while everyone else slept. At this point, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more gripping stories. Hit the bell icon to stay updated with our latest content. Your support means the world to us.